One of the most common misunderstandings of the gender ideology debate is the assertion that this is a left-wing versus right-wing argument, with the gender ideology on the left and the gender-critical reaction on the right. But this is entirely wrong and shows a lazy and reductive thinking, as almost everybody involved in this debate, from women to trans women, lesbians, feminists and transsexuals, appear on both sides of the left-right divide. It's not a case of simply being left-wing versus right-wing. In fact, the political parties involved are pretty much all split on this issue, with various sub-factions being gender-critical and others jumping full steam into the ideology. Even parts of the church and the far right have bought into this ideology, so the assertion that this is a left-wing versus right-wing debate just isn't true. So where exactly are the battle lines? To fully understand where the politics lie beneath the ideology, it's essential to look at the argument from an authoritarian versus liberal point of view, as well as left versus right wing. Gender ideology sits firmly on the authoritarian side of this argument on both the left and the right wing. The gender-critical reaction to this falls squarely on the liberal side. This is evident as most gender-critical commentators believe that people should be able to dress or act how they please, as long as it doesn't clash with women's rights. And although the majority of the gender-critical camp is politically left-wing, there are some on the right who hold similar views. This is the liberal right wing though, which tends to be more centrist in its views as opposed to the far right wing. It's an important distinction as most of the abuse transgender people face comes from the far right, supporters of groups like the EDL for example. This is where most of the vile, truly transphobic and homophobic abuse comes from, both online and in real life. However, instead of addressing this issue directly with the far-right groups involved, the trans rights activists simply dish abuse directed at anyone on the gender-critical liberal side of politics. It's a simple case of authoritarianism versus liberalism, and we've seen this play out time and time again in history. Gender ideology has its roots in university courses, primarily in America. It has at its very core a belief in totalitarian politics. This can clearly be seen in the trans activists doxing, shutting down women's groups and general support of cancel culture, trying to get people fired from their jobs for disagreeing with the ideology. There are a great deal of subversions of reality and deceit embedded in the gender ideology movement, with the belief that people can biologically change their sex at the heart of the ideology itself, rejecting scientific opinion. There's no authoritarian and violent rhetoric, as we will outline in this video, and calls for people to educate themselves on the ideology when people disagree with them. Add to that the silencing of any and all criticism and an anti-scientific belief system, along with faith in a utopian future that can't be sustained, and you can clearly see the gender ideology mirroring previous ideologies, specifically Maoism, the communist ideology espoused by Mao Zedong in the 60s and 70s in China, which led to over 30 million deaths in Mao's Cultural Revolution. And you know who else agreed with Mao? Yasser Arafat and the PLO, who claimed that Maoist China was the biggest influence in supporting our revolution and strengthening its perseverance.
Mao's quotes in the Little Red Book are made compulsory reading. With themes such as correcting mistaken ideas, the quotations become the standard by which all revolutionary efforts are judged. A youth organization called the Red Guards springs up throughout the country, preaching the teachings of Mao. The Red Guards travel all over the country, smashing the old culture, destroying much of the cultural heritage. They spearhead the interrogation, humiliation, and beatings of teachers, intellectuals, and traditional enemies of the state. 16 million young people are sent to the countryside for re-education and physical labor. Tens of thousands of officials are accused of being traitors, counter-revolutionaries, and capitalist stooges.
I actually witnessed a girl throwing herself from a top upstairs window because she couldn't stand the torment. I was 14 when the Cultural Revolution took place, and there was a lot of violence and atrocities. And I thought to myself, if this is a paradise, what then is hell? Even though I questioned the society I was living in, the regime, I couldn't question Mao. The indoctrination, the brainwashing, made it so hard for one to break out of that indoctrination. And without somebody spelling it out, even very intelligent people lived in a kind of cloud, with muddy, unclear, vague thought. My all-time literary hero is this child in Hans Christian Andersen's story, The Emperor's New Clothes. And this child had spelled it out. The emperor has no clothes.
In 1968, the Minister of Pakistan brought a gift of 40 mangoes to Chairman Mao. People of China had never eaten tropical fruit before, so this was a delicacy to them. Mao couldn't possibly eat 40 mangoes on his own, so he handed out the fruit to his political team, and a couple got in the hands of a group of factory workers. They were so mesmerized by this magical sweet fruit that they literally started to worship it, saying that it was a symbol of the wonderful new things that Chairman Mao would bring to their land. They placed it in a glass case, and when the fruit went bad, they replaced it with a wax replica. One man who had never tried mango before questioned why everyone was worshipping this piece of fruit. Well, then it got a little bit ridiculous, because even the mere suggestion that a mango wasn't a magical fruit was enough to kill a man for treason. This is just one of many examples of how irrationally devoted to Mao Zedong people were. He was willing to dismantle thousands of years of Chinese history and culture in order to execute his communist vision.